Hey, I'm Jen, and I love horror movies.
I'm Mikey. I'm dead inside it. I also love horror movies.
And we really like to torture our friend Todd because he hates horror movies.
That I do. And that's why they call me the horror virgin.
That's the only reason we call him that.
That's no other reasons at all. None at all.
Whatever. So
every week we take him through the encyclopedia of horror, the good, the bad, the ridiculously Jack Frosts.
And then we make fun of it more or less.
Or explain its deceptive feminism.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. That's my thing.
And I'm the funny one. Our episodes drop on Monday, so check us out.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK, Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Big thanks and a hello to the subscribers. I appreciate you all checking out the show every single week, the show, every multiple episode that we put out here. In fact, we have new interviews going out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So thanks for listening to all of those and all the comments that you all have sent through the various channels, whether it's Podcast World or over at the YouTube comment box. I always appreciate hearing what you liked about the interview and the questions or whatever. Even the ones of you who are like, hey, Kyle, stop talking as much. I like hearing that as well because at least I know you're listening. If you're not a subscriber, become one of those people, either that tell me to shut up or that says, hey, thanks for doing the interview. Become one of those people by hitting the subscribe button wherever you're listening from right now, whether that is like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Acast, Podchaser. Just type in Kyle Meredith with in your preferred podcasting destination, and we'll take care of the rest. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today I'm talking with the naked and famous Alisa and Thom. They are back. And as the story goes, they're sort of back as a duo, and they'll tell you it's how the band started. But through the various variations they've been through the years, they are now back to a duo to set up a new album called Recover. So it not only begins a new chapter for the band, but a bit of a new sound too. They've furthered what you know them as the indie pop band. They've taken it further, and we're going to talk about all of that. What it means in this new variation, the co-writing that they've involved with this process, and how they decided on their direction. It wasn't without trial and error, as they'll tell you. And we'll also get into the deeper meanings. Recover is the album title. There's also a title track, and it speaks to a lot. It speaks to them personally. It also kind of speaks to the band as a whole. So we'll get the story behind all of that. The difficulty of keeping a band together. And as it's been said in press releases, recovering their artistic vessel. It's also a record that curiously weaves death with love. In songs like Death, in songs like Bury Us, and specifically in a song like Anesthetic, which recounts a near-death experience. We'll also have a little fun with song titles, like Come As You Are. Sure, you can put the pieces together for that one. And if you're a fan of cute dogs, and I know you are, we have one that plays a very strong role in the lead single with Sunseeker. Now, 2020 also marks the 10th anniversary of the Naked and Famous first record, Passive Me, Aggressive You. It's a record that meant a lot at the time. It still means a lot to a lot of people. And I want to know how much it means to Alisa and Thom today. With a new album to tour, will they be celebrating this one? So all that and more, let's jump into it, talking about the new album, Recover. It's Kyle Meredith with the Naked and Famous.
Yeah, nice to meet you over the phone.
Over the phone. I've absolutely loved hearing this new record, Recover. It's such a fun album, congratulations. I know it wasn't an easy road to get here, from the sound of it at least. So, major props to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we're congratulating ourselves that we even made it to this point, too.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say.
Let's get some of that backstory that, we're kind of alluding to right here. Because as the story goes, you are now a duo. I mean, you've had, the various different styles and amount of members in the band, I guess. What are the biggest differences in your state of being at this point?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. We actually started as a duo. Alisa and I met in 2006, and we began making music, just the two of us. So our first two EPs, they were called This Machine and No Light. They're like available on Spotify and iTunes, whatever. That was really just us as a duo. And we brought in a live band to make it a full thing, but we didn't really have permanent members. until we began writing the album. So the Naked and Famous always has been a duo as far as the creative. It's always been Alisa and I as the songwriters. But the bands that we had obviously helped us produce the music and develop, like, you know, a slightly rockier, more indie alternative kind of sound. And
I guess back then in our process, when we were just figuring things out, navigating, writing, playing live, the band members really helped us inform how we ended up finishing a lot of the songs on the earlier work.
Yeah,
So,
and it was so vital to, like, playing gigs and
yeah.
all that. But now that, it's funny because now that we're, like, an established act and we've been doing this for 10 plus years, the idea of us being a duo, it doesn't feel any different for us because we're still going to go and do all the same things, like play a live show. And it's not, none of that stuff, like, daunting to us anymore, whereas back in the day, it was like, how do you be a cool indie act without having a full band?
Yeah, and, like, how are all these moving parts in these songs going to be playable, because we didn't put anything on track. And in the modern world of, like, live touring, people have playback guys now. They have so much stuff on track, like, nobody really cares. Nobody really knows, like, what's being played and what's not being played. So,
kind of those like old sort of, like, ideas of authenticity that we, like, clung to back in the day. we have, like, finally just given up on them and, like, gotten with the rest of the world.
I think we've gotten to the point where we've gone, like, we've proven ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah.
We can do it, but let's just make it easier. So back to your question. Yeah, there were a few revolving, like, band members, and then we settled in, and on the first record with Jesse and David. And Aaron was actually there from day one, because Thom and Aaron, they were doing the live engineering course where I met them at music college. And so he was actually always helping us out, and he didn't actually join the band until the first record. But on the first two EPs, he was, like, engineering and helping us record. And
I want to say that, like, it's been more of a personal change than, like, something that's had an effect on us as artists. Or, do you know what I mean? Like having band members leave is like having your friends, like, leave the country or something. It's affected us on a deeply personal level, where it kind of signified the end of something, an end of an era. It was like the end of our personal story. But as far as, like, being a fan of the Naked and Famous, it hasn't changed what we are. And you know, I don't want to sound like someone who's trying to post hoc rationalize Sweet Lemons. You know that saying, like, Sweet Lemons sour grapes. I'm not trying to say it's Sweet Lemons, but it really has been very creatively freeing for us to kind of throw off the shackles of, oh, this is a 5-piece band. We have to sound like a 5-piece band. So for us, like, producing this new album was really about exciting Alisa and I, and thinking we wanted to feel like, oh, this feels fresh for us. This feels new for the Naked and Famous. This feels exciting. This isn't like we're not just exploring the same old sonic territory. So yeah, in that way, it was actually revitalizing and probably really, really essential for us to keep going.
It's not easy to keep a band together in any state, and especially, I mean, you all are over 10 years old now, technically, I think, and so I don't think that's you know, to keep that, you know, there are very few bands that come out unscathed with all original members. I think I can only name one or two off the top of my head, so, you know, I don't think.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I recently watched Foles released a documentary about, you know, which gives some insight into what it's like being in a band. And also Coldplay released awesome documentary as well, kind of like just old footage spanning the entirety of their career. And I'm just, like, sitting there watching and just going, yeah, it's really, really fucking tough being in a band. There's so many personalities to juggle. There's so many things that you have to accommodate for each other. And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe all the years we just kind of, like, got through all of the hardest parts of our career together. And, like, yeah, I look back and I'm like, that was so exhausting. I almost, like, black out and, like, can't remember how I got through it all, you know? It's just so strange to me. And I'm like, oh, maybe I just can't remember because I had to block it out as a coping mechanism or whatever. But, yeah, being in a band is one of the hardest things to maintain, and it's crazy that we get to do this and we get to still be a band after all the changes that we've gone through.
You kind of mentioned, it sounded like, you know, chapter closing, you know, that opportunity. Was the last release still hard? Did that allow you to kind of close that chapter? Can that, you know, compilation kind of be seen in that way? Like, okay, let's round it all up. Let's do something special so we can move on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's totally what we did. It was like a transitional thing for Alisa and I because we were feeling like we didn't know what the next step was. And to be honest, we probably put too much. I feel this way. We put too much effort into it. Like it was at first it was just like, let's do a strip recording of something, and then getting to conceptual, I was like, no, we have to do everything, and we have to do the whole album, and like almost make a greatest hits and showcase the songs in a different light, and like make a point about the fact that our songs are, they translate at the core of them. Anyway, but I do feel like it took up a lot of time, but it was like a difficult thing to do, but also a necessary thing to do. I don't know. I feel really proud of the way that album sounds. I'm not sure that it was like career-wise if it felt as necessary by the time we got to the end of it, but I'm happy it's out there. I feel grateful it's out there.
So then moving on, so we get now to Recover. And you can hear the Naked and Famous. I mean, obviously the DNA is there, but you talked about pushing forward, and it does seem like there's a new direction peeking its head out here, whether it's leaning more towards the electronics. But what was the idea? Where did you all land that said, okay, this is the path forward?
Well, basically, Thom and I, we had continued writing. I feel like we kind of wrote a record before we wrote Recover, and I threw a real spanner in the works because I remember just listening back to our demos. These aren't evolved enough for us. Like, what do people want to hear in 2020 from the Naked and Famous? And I just said to Thom, I was like, super, super straightforward. I was like, look, if we're gonna make another record, it can't sound like an offcut. I'm like, if you want to make another record like Simple Forms, I don't want to make one at all. Mm-hmm. And that kind of like was the catalyst for our kind of unbreaking of what we are used to and how we are used to creating. And so we were thinking like, okay, wow, we have like kind of default setting when we write together. We both use the same neural pathways when we create together. We need to do something new. And the easiest answer to that was, we need other people in the room, new energy, new people to collaborate with. That's something we haven't really done in terms of like collaborating on production and really collaborating on songwriting. So we had our friend, a very, very old friend, his name's Simon Oscraft, who came in and like jumped in on some co-production and some co-writing, and we had Lunar Shadows do some co-writing, and we had a friend called Danny Poppett who did some co-writing. So when we had our big eureka moment from those co-writing sessions was Recover.
Yeah, that's like like Alisa said, we made all this music, and then we were just struggling to find a new sound, and we kind of like abandoned it all and went in blind. And she was coming to a session at her house. Simon and I were hanging out. We were waiting for her to get back. She was like getting coffee or something, and she storms into the room and she's like, "I've written this song or this chorus," as she was driving up to the session, and she jumps into the room and just sings Recover, like the top line without any accompaniment or anything.
I was like, find the chords to this melody I'm hearing in my head.
Yeah, it was awesome. And like Simon and I were just like, whoa. So we immediately jumped on her. She has this glorious grand piano in her living room. We jumped on the piano and had the guitar. And then we recorded the song that she sang. And the way that we produced the song was so fun because we recorded that version first, like, the sort of folky, almost singer-songwriter version, and then use that to then develop this more electronic version. So when you hear the song and it begins with that sort of like almost Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros sounding intro, that was actually the first version of the song.
Did you all realize the bigger implications of, I guess, the lyrics and the themes of that song really early on? Because obviously, as a title track, I think it speaks to a lot that sounds very personal, but even as a title, it is the perfect sentiment for what it sounds like you all are going through.
100%, yeah.
100%. I mean, my headspace that year, I've spoken about this before, but I often think about my mother when I'm creating, when I'm having really tough time, because when you're going through tough times, people usually have their parents to call, for advice or for some kind of comfort or just to vent. And there are so many milestones in my life where I wish I had that, and the kind of grief that comes with that. There's nothing and no one who can really like get you out of it. You know, you're the only person who can, like, essentially, like, regain and recover yourself. So that was the spirit of where the inspiration came from. And to further that universally, like, yeah, it really does speak to the moment of time that we were living writing this record, because Thom and I were just going through so many changes with our creative process. We were really head to head, and, like, there was literally nothing and no one who could try and help and fix it. Like, we had ourselves to blame. We were the only ones who had the power to make things better. We had to just regain a sense of decorum and move forward. So, yeah, Recover is a very, very special song, and I think that message is something that everyone can relate to. You know, I had friends go through breakups who stayed at my house, and I was there to support them, but essentially at the end of the day, like, you are the only person responsible for your own happiness and your own self-esteem, and, you know, there's no one that can do that for you except yourself. So that's kind of like where the root of the message of the song comes from.
It sounds like relationships and the various stages play a big part in, you know, kind of threads throughout this record. I mean, I even, you know, pull out a few other songs, like the title Death jumps out at me, but when I listen to it, I think this might be a love song, actually.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's
Very sweet. Thank you.
It
Yeah,
is.
that was the idea.
I love that song. The story behind it is really funny. Well, actually not funny at all.
No, it's like it is what you hear. It's like it's like a love song. But that one line, the line that I think came from was just we both like the idea of a checkered kitchen floor and dying by the ocean side. Maybe there's nothing more. That was like where the song started from. I don't know. That was one where I kind of thought I wanted to just be risky and, like, write a really sincere song.
But also, like, when we rocked up to the studio that day and we were deciding to write a song for Thom, it's like, Thom, you need to write about your near-death experience.
Oh yeah,
like that was. I'm like, that was such a crazy time, and you've never written about it. Like, let's write about it.
Yeah, so there was like those two tracks. Like, Death is kind of the sentiment that, you know, it's a mortality song, so I really like it, and it's got it's like an afterthought to Anesthetic, which is the song Alisa's talking about. Anesthetic is like a song about I nearly died from septic poisoning and ended up in hospital from I got a severe case of food poisoning that became septic, so it became blood poisoning, and then I got rushed to hospital and was there for 2 days. Got out of the hospital and flew up to Bottle Rock and played a show. Wow. We were on a festival. It was pretty gnarly, but it kind of scarred me for a minute. I didn't go back to the restaurant that I ate from for a long time. But that was my first proper brush with death. And it sounds like kind of ridiculous, like nearly dying from food poisoning. But I didn't nearly die from food poisoning. I nearly died from septic blood poisoning. Mm-hmm. And I found out that 1 in every 3 cases ends in death. Or it was like later that month that I saw this billboard on the street, and it said that. It was like 1 in 3 cases of sepsis gets misdiagnosed in a hospital, and people die all the time. So yeah, it was horrific. It was pretty scary, but
and if it wasn't for Thom's partner, he wouldn't have made it to Bottle Rock, and he wouldn't have made it to the hospital, actually.
Yeah.
Wow. So to be able
that was something that I felt like, we needed to write about.
Yeah. Well, then, you know, to get that, you know, first song of it, but then to take that, you know, song and further stretch that out in Death. And, you know, I was thinking, like, there's a lot of ways to write a love song. I don't think that one's tackled very often. You know, I can kind of see, like, maybe something like Death Cab's I Will Follow You Into the Dark, you know, but that sort of way around, you know, saying that, like, that's not a common way to do it, which is a nice trick to pull out there.
Thank you.
And further on through the record, I mean, that comes up in the second single as well. Not Death, obviously, but Bury Us. Well, I guess technically it's in the title there, maybe a little bit with Death too. But that also is sort of speaking about those stages, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Death is all over this record, I guess.
Death is definitely, again, like a love song tackled from a different perspective, though. It's like a beginning of relationship love song. It's about taking a risk if you're feeling damaged or feeling hesitant. You know, it's about the ideas behind commitments and, you know, avoiding those potential commitments So it's an encouragement song, really. It's like kind of cerebral, but it is actually just an encouraging love song. I think when we write love songs, we try not to be so plain about it. I think we try and write about the sides of love that are more complicated or more interesting or more...
it depends, really.
Yeah, it's, we're not usually saying... I think we try not to say anything cliched about love. I think we try and write about parts that people don't often write about. But I guess that's alternative music in general, digging deeper into ideas and emotions.
Well, at least for that one, yeah.
I mean, that's what I hope to get out of alternative music. I can say that regardless of the genre, there's a lot of artists still writing "Hey baby, I love you" in the same way over and over. So if you can find a way to get around that, I feel like that's a big mountain, a bigger mountain than I think people give credit for.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's I feel the same as you. Like that's why I like alternative music. So exactly what you just said is that I'm always hoping to get something more out of it, something more interesting, something a little broader in topic or meaning or scope of insight and interest. And I do like pop music, but I'm really turned off by stupid sentiments in songs. I find it really difficult to look past something if it's like,
well, different songs serve different needs, and if you're feeling a bit silly and freaky, then you can put on one of those songs. But if you're feeling a little bit like sentimental and deep in thought, then you'd probably listen to something else.
And I'll also bring up another one real quick, just out of curiosity. "Come As You Are," that's a very famous title to also have your song as. And I thought that had to have occurred at some points in the process.
Yeah. But, that's totally fine because I just found out recently that "Come As You Are" is like totally ripped from another
absolutely the 80s song from Killing Joke, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I found out, I was like, oh, that's fine. I don't care. If anyone makes the connection to us and Nirvana, I'll be like, yeah, well, have you made a connection to the Killing Joke? But you know what? That's a really cool point that you brought up because I like that. I like thoughtful referencing about the artists. And, our band name, The Naked and Famous, is it's kind of a distorted line from a Tricky song that his track Tricky Kid, he says everybody wants to be just like me, I'm naked and famous. We became The Naked and Famous, and I thought that was just really cool to reference someone or something that was important to you or inspiring. And I don't think that people probably draw any connection between us and Tricky from a listen and our music, and I think that's cool in itself as well. It's not obvious, but yeah, I like that. I like artists referencing interesting things.
I think most of my favorite bands do that within their own songs quite a lot, whether it's, the greats who will use one specific name when they're talking about, someone, long lost love or something, or if they're specifically referencing other lines. I mean, it makes listening, it puts that extra level on there, almost like a little, a puzzle that you didn't see coming your way.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The more of that, the better.
Yeah, I agree.
And the last one, because it seems like a fun story too. The first single, Sunseeker, I read that's about a dog in a way. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
She's sitting right next to us.
I started dating this lovely guy who had a dog, and we're still together. And we live together, and Ginger is the dog's name. She is like such a treasure. Everybody loves her. She's in every single writing session. She's just always there. And I always feel her absence when she's not around. But the morning that we had a writing session with Lunar Shadows came and Thom and Sam, we were all sitting around the dining room table. I went outside and just standing at the front door, looking out into the garden, and Ginger was just sitting in the patch of sun, just, soaking it up. She turns her head up to the sky, and her nose, you can just see her nose moving, just sniffing. And I'm like, oh, what are we going to write about today? I was just thinking, what are we going to write about today? And I always called Ginger my little Sunseeker. So I was looking at her, and I was thinking about the word Sunseeker, and I just walked into the room. I know what we're writing about today. The word is Sunseeker. Let's go in the studio and talk about it. And so that's kind of how that song came about.
It's a fantastic song, and it was a great introduction to kind of this whole thing too. I mean, as far as an introduction or even a reintroduction, I love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel like this record just has a lot of optimism threaded throughout, and that's something that we just haven't done before. A lot of our records are quite sad and writing about heartbreak and all sorts of miserable things that you go through in your 20s. But I feel like now Thom and I are just kind of more settled into who we are as people and settled into our lives a bit more. And I feel like this record is a reflection of that in some ways, with the optimism that you hear in the music and in the lyrics.
Well, I know with a new album out, that's where a lot of bands want to put the concentration, but with a record like Passive Me, Aggressive You having its 10th anniversary this year, do you all take that moment to celebrate, or do you keep the eyes on the present and the future?
I'd like to take a moment to celebrate that, because that record changed our lives. If it wasn't for that record, we wouldn't be here. We owe a lot to that record, and I think it would be really great if we could celebrate it.
What does that time look like for you all? Because that must have been a time of huge excitement that you usually, like for a lot of bands, you don't get to pay attention to it while you're in it. Every day is a day of work or something like that, some variation of that. But do you have a different perspective now that you can see it in the rear view?
Yeah, I mean, I think your description of it is pretty much the way I feel about it. Like, it was a time that I feel nostalgic and sad that I wasn't able to take it in a little more. I was very naive. Like, I've only just really realized now how clueless I was. And I guess this is like a sign of the times thing as well. Like, we were on the cusp of internet culture taking over music. Alisa and I got to experience like CD sales and like, you know what I mean? Like, we worked in music retail. And when we were first signed as a group, I remember hearing a statistic like the market was 80% physical still and 20% digital. Like that's like when we came on board, that was still how people consumed music and bought music. So I don't know, like it's interesting to see how things have changed and what has worked and what hasn't worked. I think, I wish I could go back and do it slightly differently, because I would focus my energies in places that mattered more.
I think you were at your peak workaholic kind of, grind.
I was, but maybe in a lot of the wrong ways. I think I was very like afraid of the world, and had a chip on my shoulder and didn't realize how scared I was of everything. And I think that stopped me from. I think it stopped me from doing as much as I could. But I feel very grateful. I feel very lucky to have done what we've done and experienced having a real music career. Just that alone still blows my mind.
It's an obvious classic record that still sounds great today, and it's so awesome to hear how you all have progressed through the years, and especially on this new record with Recover. I seriously love what you've both done. So, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for sticking through it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, congratulations on Recover, and thank you both for taking the time to talk to me about all of this today. It was a real pleasure.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
you
You too.
Right.
Bye-bye.
My thanks to Alisa and Thom. The Naked and Famous, the new record is called Recover. Big thanks to you as well for checking out the episode. Before you get out of here, I do hope you hit the subscribe button and stick around with us. Let us give you new interviews throughout the week. It's a really fun way to keep up with your favorite artists. Again, you can subscribe in any of the major podcast spots, whether that's npr.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even YouTube. You can subscribe over there as well. Give us a comment, rating, review, whatever you're inspired. After that, head to WFPK.org, where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, and bonus interviews, too. Again, that's WFPK.org. Consequence of Sound has your music and film news. You can find me on any of the social media platforms at Kyle Meredith. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Cool.
You
Well,
have such a nice radio voice. I was
Yeah,
like,
you do.
you've got a really nice voice. Just natural, all natural.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.